That's the introduction. And now I'm going to hand you over to Mark. Mark is going to go through it, and feel free to ask questions as you go along. You're all thought leaders, and we want to get your input, feedback, and thoughts on this, because this is an important part in the process too, is to get your understanding of it and to ensure that this project is aligned with what local and state networks would like. So with that being said, Mark, go ahead.
Thanks, Jeff. Good morning, everyone. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you. I've enjoyed immensely the past 2 years working with Jeff and getting to know WCR better. And it's fun for me to be at this point with everyone today. You might see the word chapters used in some of the things that we're going to talk about today. Just know that I understand that you have networks, and we use sometimes the word chapter kind of generically. So I apologize if that pops up now and then. So one of the things that I would love to do, and we have a small enough group today to do this, I would love to have a conversation with you as if we were all in the same room together, sitting around a table. So I'm going to encourage you, if you have a question, please just stop me. I probably, Zoom has a little chat room kind of thing. And typically when I get talking, I'm not checking all that other stuff. So just stop, ask a question, say, hey, Mark, tell me more about that, or what about this, or whatever. And I'd love to do that. I think that would be the best use of everyone's time today. So just a real kind of quick background on Billhighway. We've been in business for 20 years. Our headquarters are in Detroit, Michigan. We have about 130 employees that work between our two main offices, which is in Detroit and Los Angeles. And we only work with nonprofits, and specifically, we only work with nonprofits that have the same type of organizational structure that you do, which is kind of this multi-tiered, some kind of national or international headquarters organization, chapters, networks, whatever you might call that middle layer, and then members. We actually do that for 3 different vertical markets. The first one that we ever got started in was sororities and fraternities. And then today, in addition to that market, we also work with labor unions, and then obviously with associations, which happens to be our largest market. So one of the things, if you think about a sorority, is they do a lot of the same things that your networks do, right? So members join typically at the headquarters level, which has some Greek letters, and then their chapters at college and university campuses around the country are tasked with fulfilling that mission, right? It's the boots on the ground, the way that people connect and network locally. Sorority chapters, for example, have to file taxes. They receive monies from the headquarters organization. They hold events that they have to collect money for. They have to pay bills and do banking, and sometimes issue expense reports and make sure money doesn't get lost or stolen, intentionally or unintentionally. File 990s at the end of the year. And so Billhighway 20 years ago set out to try to find a way, how can we help to automate and simplify a lot of these day-to-day administrative tasks, specifically for volunteer network or chapter or section leaders. And so one of the things to understand about Billhighway is that we are a software solution, but we're more than that. We're a software solution that's actually built on top of and integrated into a banking platform. And so we bring a lot of automations and efficiencies around collecting money, paying bills, everything related to accounting, finance, banking, and really running your network. And the idea here is that if we can dramatically simplify the job of being an officer, especially the treasurer or the president, right, and make that so much simpler, then we're going to achieve 2 goals. And maybe the most important goal is you're going to have more time to spend on focusing on members, right, and less time on administration, which creates this virtuous cycle for everyone. It generates more money. It increases retention. And then the other thing is it makes it easier for people to want to volunteer. And so we've seen sometimes networks where the treasurer has been in that position for 10 years or 12 years or whatever because no one else wants to do it. And that's not really a sign of a healthy, thriving, vibrant network. You want that change in leadership and then new ideas and people becoming invested. So, so one of the ways that we help to do this is we integrate with the member management system, the AMS, whatever you want to call it, that is at the national level. So in your case, that's Fantiva. So what happens is that as a member becomes a member or renews their membership within Fantiva at WCR National, that database informs Billhighway of all of that membership data. So in real time, as you log into Billhighway to help run your network, and I'll show you all of this, all of that member data sits there for you to interact with and see and use. The other thing that happens is that as members pay their dues to either join or renew within Fantiva, Billhighway can take those funds and automatically split them so that we can deposit the network portion of those funds into your Billhighway bank account. Which does a couple of things. It automates a process which saves the national staff a lot of manual time around distributing all those funds. And it gets your funds into your bank account immediately instead of, you know, once a month or whatever. So we can talk a little bit more about that. But one of the things that I promised Jeff that I would mention and I failed to do at the start, so let me just cover it now. This is completely voluntary. So WCR is not saying you have to use this. What WCR is doing is they're entering into a relationship with Billhighway, and because of that relationship, networks are able to use our system if you all decide that you want to. And we think that you will, because we think that we will make life better and easier and solve a lot of problems, and I'll show you that today. But just know this is a voluntary thing that is being offered to you all as network leaders to choose to use or not. So let me just pause there because I've been talking for about 10 minutes and see if there's any questions or commentary on any of that so far. So one of the things
I think there was one question. Roseanne, did you have a question? Yes, I'm going to unmute you right now.
Thank you. My question is if the state decides to do this, does that mean that all of the networks in that state need to do it?
So from Billhighway's perspective, no. The state will opt in and then the networks will opt in as well. There's never a mandate or a requirement that any network use Billhighway.
Okay.
So in other words, Roseanne, you may decide this is great for New York, present it at one of the state meetings. Everybody's excited except for two networks. They like their local bank. They want to do things the way they are. Then they just simply opt out. This is not something where we'd force anybody.
Okay. Thank you.
Roseanne, I can tell you too that one of the things that we typically find is that right off the bat, 90% of the networks or the chapters that we speak to raise their hand and say, this will change our lives. Mark, how do I get on this as quickly as possible? Those other 10% are a little slower to adopt or whatever number of reasons. And typically they come along in time, not because we force them to, but because we educate them about how much easier life is after Billhighway than it was before. So
well, I can see that because one of the problems that we have here is that depending on who the treasurer is, the state treasurer,
yes,
we're continually switching banks because like we have Chase Bank, you know, in the South, but up north, you know, they don't have Chase Bank. They have something else.
Yes. And
so we're always closing an account and opening an account. And, you know, it's a real pain.
Yes, so let's talk about that for a minute. And I love just the ability to vamp on this a little bit. By the way, do I hear a New York accent?
An accent?
Are you from New York?
Born and raised.
So I grew up on Long Island. My mom and dad were born in Brooklyn on Decatur Street, and I lived in the West Village for about 10 years. So I can still pick that up a little bit.
Well, I'm from Westchester, Yonkers.
I wasn't trying to call you out, I promise.
I don't hear it
So
myself, but apparently some people do.
So when we talk about Billhighway as more than a software solution, but also a software solution that's built on top of a banking platform, what we do is we set up virtualized bank accounts for every network within the WCR system. And so what happens is as members join and renew, those funds that are collected from the national organization automatically get routed into your Billhighway bank account. You then, as a network, decide, it's your decision, would you like to have those funds automatically swept out every day, that they hit that account into whatever local bank account that you have with Chase or whomever you might be using? Or would you like to allow them to remain in that Billhighway bank account? And if you choose that, then that money will grow there and build there just like it would any other bank account. But then you have the ability to spend your money out of that bank account as well. And I'm going to talk about all of this, but just conceptually know that we will create these virtualized bank accounts for every network. Funds will flow into that from the national organization. You can choose to keep them there and use the full Billhighway solution, which I'll talk about, or they can be swept out on an automated basis right into your local bank, and you can continue to go on just as you ever have. So there are typically 3 ways that networks receive funds into into your network.
Mark,
one bit in the presentation. I'm sorry, did someone have a question?
Yeah, it's Jeff. We have a couple more questions as well. Would you like to take them now, or?
Sure.
Okay. Next is Pamela Banks. Pamela.
Hi, good morning, Mark. Thank you so much. A couple questions for you. Who has access to these, to the system? Does the state have access to the local, and how does that work? And also, how long are the records held? Do they follow, is there every year that they stay in there for a few years, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I'm gonna answer the second question first and then the first one. So the records stay within the Billhighway system for as long as your network remains using Billhighway, plus 7 years thereafter. So if, in other words, you use this for 3 years and then decided that you didn't want to use it anymore, those records would be available to you, historically, if somebody needed to access them at some point. As far as the first question, who has access to it? So what happens is that in Fontiva, and if Jeff, I'm assuming everyone knows what on this call what Fontiva is, right? But
yeah,
in Fontiva,
just for clarifications, Fontiva is our database, our backend system.
Fontiva lists or has record of each network's officers. So president, treasurer, whatever different officer types you have are held within Fontiva. And based upon those roles, you have rights and privileges within Billhighway. And WCR will define what those roles and privileges are. So maybe you define, for example, you know what, if you're treasurer or president, we want you to be able to move money, see bank account balances, pay bills, etc. If you're, I don't know, I'm making up a role of secretary, I don't know what all your officer titles are, maybe you have the ability to generate and run reports, but not actually interact with funds. So that access is controlled based upon your officer role. And I'll give you an example of how this works. So if you're doing business with a local bank and all of a sudden you have a new treasurer, guess what? The old treasurer, the new treasurer, typically the president, everybody has to go down to a local bank. You have to have people removed from that account. You have to have people added to the account, new people who are authorized. All that, and we've seen networks that they have their funds locked up because they can't get the old treasurer to go down and take their name off the account. So in the Billhighway system, all of that is controlled by the officer role within Billhighway. So if you're no longer the treasurer anymore, your access to that bank account is going to be terminated. And you are now a new treasurer coming in, your access is going to be opened. You'll receive a welcome email from Billhighway. It'll have a temporary user ID and password. It will ask you to log into the system to create your own credentials and all that type of stuff that you would expect from an online banking system. The second part of your question was, can the states see into your account? And the answer is that Billhighway gets set up however you all as an organization decide you want it to be set up. So we have some clients where the state or the national can see certain activity that's happening because they, so I'll give you an example. Some associations require their networks once a year to send them financial reports, an annual financial report. How many events did you have? How many people came to these events? Whatever that is. And one of the things that Billhighway can do is we can expose that data to the national or the state organization so that the volunteers don't have to submit those reports. But if the association says, no, you know what? Our networks are their own separate legal entities. We don't really want to have oversight or visibility into what they're doing with their funds, and we set it up that way. So it can expand or collapse based upon how you all as leaders decide you want it.
And next,
I'm seeing your head nodding, so hopefully I was responsive to those questions. So typically there are three ways that networks—
Mark, we have a couple of other questions or people have raised their
go
hand.
ahead.
No problem. Jamie Saltman, you're next.
Good morning. And you may cover this later in your presentation, but I'm curious about the reconciliation. So how are the locals or maybe the state going to be able to reconcile when the money's deposited?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. Great question.
Okay. And Eileen, you have a question. Maybe I need to unmute you, Eileen. Hold on just a second here. Oh, no, I got to ask you to unmute.
There we go. Okay.
There we go.
Hi, Mark. I'm from California, and you covered a little bit regarding treasurers going. Each year we have a new treasurer. You're right. Each year we need to go to the bank and sit down with the bank, and we have to show the minutes, and the minutes have to reflect exactly what we're doing. So can you dive a little deeper in that procedure when it comes to electing a new treasurer and president? Because one issue that we have is we want to make sure that every network has at least two people that have access to the bank account so that a treasurer or a president can't just like get up and leave and saying, you guys have to start over. So do you have situations where one person who has the password is like gone and you have to start over again to get into the account?
Yeah. So Billhighway changes that whole dynamic. So you as the network will decide who has access to Billhighway and what type of access, full access, limited access, etc. As you inform national, so Jeff's team in Chicago, hey, this is our president, this is our treasurer, this is whomever, right? These people who used to be the treasurer and president last year are no longer, here are the new people. Billhighway will receive that data from Fontiva and automatically terminate access for those who are leaving and create new access and the appropriate rights and privileges for that role within the Billhighway system.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's very similar to how we report officers to national, and national gives us access to our rosters and databases. It sounds like it's very similar to that.
That's exactly right. And what we're trying to do is not create one more thing for you to do, but less things. So Billhighway, you don't have to inform Billhighway of that. You're informing National. They're giving you roster access. Billhighway takes that same data and gives you Billhighway access.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
By the way, each individual officer who is authorized will have their own separate username and password. So you don't have to share something. And every time someone logs into Billhighway, all of their data within our system is tracked, time dated, and stamped for audit purposes. So if the board ever needed to look at, well, who spent this money, or who authorized this payment, or who moved these funds, or whatever, it's all there. And actually, I'll take a moment, and we're jumping around, but it's fine. We build into Billhighway automated workflow around payments. So let's talk about kind of a bigger picture. So if you're looking at the screen in front of me, 3 ways that networks typically bring money in. One is the dues that HQ sends you. One is that you have events, right? So you use an event registration system. Somebody goes in and pays their $10 or their $20. They register for an event, and you have to have a PayPal account or something to process that. And those funds ultimately get into your bank account. And then you sometimes have in-person payments. So an in-person payment, maybe you have someone sponsoring one of your events or whatever, and they write a $500 check, or you have a golf outing, or someone shows up to an event and they didn't pre-register, and so now they have a credit card or a check that they want to pay by, right? And so Billhighway, the way that we handle each of these is, I talked about the HQ ones. The in-person payments, we actually have a mobile app that you can swipe a credit card or insert it if it's a chip card, or take a picture of a check so that nobody has to run to the bank. And when Billhighway sets up, and this is to the person that had the reconciliation question, when Billhighway sets up our solution for your network, we mimic your chart of accounts. And so we know, because of our integration into Fontiva, we know who the person is that's making the payment or the funds are coming from. We know what they're buying. We know how much they're supposed to be, their buying is supposed to cost. We process that transaction and we reconcile, did we process a charge in the amount that was supposed to have been charged? And then we watch that all the way into the bank account. So we're reconciling all of your incoming payments as they happen, watching them all the way into the bank account, balancing those cash accounts and reconciling them. And then automatically posting all of those journal entries to the right part in your chart of accounts. So we're combining payments, banking, accounting, all into one solution. And so if you think about this from an accounting perspective, just kind of visualize an income statement. Billhighway is automating the entire left side of an income statement. We're interacting with every form of payment that comes into your network, reconciling it, and then posting the appropriate journal entries. So all of your financial statements are up to date without anyone having to go into QuickBooks and post manual journal entries, without anyone having to get a monthly PayPal statement that may have 50 charges on it, that has a PayPal ID and a dollar amount. And nobody knows, well, what was this for, right? So the treasurer has to go through some manual reconciliation process to tie each one of those charges out and post the journal entries and make sure that they were right, et cetera, et cetera. Billhighway does all of that automatically, just as you use the system without anyone manually having to do it. And to anticipate a question that somebody might have, if you want to keep using QuickBooks, you can, and all that information can be exported into QuickBooks. But what most networks will do is they'll stop using QuickBooks because they don't need it anymore, because Billhighway automates all of that without the extra expense or expertise that you might need in using QuickBooks. In fact, one of the things we find is people pay money for QuickBooks, but they use like 5% of it. So Billhighway is tying all of that together so that you don't have to do banking separately, accounting separately, and all of the work that comes with those applications being separate. We're tying them together. So if it happens in one place here, it automatically updates all these other places somewhere else. So let me pause there. Any questions, Jeff, or anyone about receiving money into Billhighway's account? Yeah, Roseanne, I see your hand lifted, but you're on mute right now.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, we are eliminating the use of PayPal or Square or Eventbrite. We won't have to use any of those anymore.
That's correct.
Eliminate taking cash.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So Billhighway almost becomes like your network solution in a box, right? And so typically people who are volunteering, they're not volunteering because they want to figure out how to go set up bank accounts and set up PayPal accounts and Eventbrite accounts. Volunteering because they care about the mission and they want to network and they want to, right? So how can we just bundle all of that into something that you all can use? So that's what we're doing. The one area where this breaks down is in cash. So I can't take $100 bill and insert it into my computer, my laptop, and have it go somewhere. But I can tell you that more and more associations are trying to get rid of cash, because cash is where we run into problems. How do we document it? How do we make sure that, it doesn't stay in someone's pocket accidentally?
Right.
So the way that we do that is let's make it so easy for networks to collect any other form of payment that people are going to have on them anyway, so that they don't have to pay cash.
So that's great.
So, it within the Billhighway application, swipe a debit card, it's going to deposit into your Billhighway account. It's going to reconcile all of that process with the bank. It's going to post the journal entries or take a picture of the check. Same thing happens. Nobody has to go to the bank. Everything is automated. And by the way, every officer who has access or every board member can come into the system and see data without someone having to prepare monthly board reports. And we're generating all of those automatically for you. And I'll show you that as we move on in the next half.
Okay, and one other question. I'm assuming this also eliminates all fees? So if you use PayPal or something, you don't actually get, the full amount of.
Yeah, so I'll talk about fees. We don't eliminate them, we replace them, right? So I have to, as we process a credit card, I have to pay Visa and I have to pay, right? So we charge to do that, and I'll show you those fees. Typically, they're less than PayPal. So it's not you're eliminating the need for PayPal, which eliminates the fees for PayPal, and you replace that with using Billhighway.
So the statement that it's offered to networks at no charge, it's no charge except for the fees.
Yeah, so I think what Jeff means by that is there's no charge to set Billhighway up. There's no charge annual fee for you to use it. As we process payments within our system, there's a fee to process those payments, as you might expect. But there's no right.
Similar to Eventbrite or other portals of sorts. So Jamie's got a question, and then after that, Eileen's got a question. So Jamie, go ahead.
Hi there, Mark. By the way, I'm from Detroit, just so you know. Born there.
Awesome.
So reporting, I'm assuming that you guys would help or assist the networks with reporting for their taxes and that kind of thing?
We do, and I'll speak to that.
Thank you.
In fact, I'll show it to you.
Eileen.
Hi, Mark. So we take a picture of a check, and this is a really redundant rookie question. So there's no maximum amount of check. You'll take any check, because I know some banks you can't take pictures of checks over 5,000 or over 10,000. Sometimes we get big checks like that. So that's not an issue?
I have not had this question come up, and I haven't had anyone say that's ever been an issue. But rather than answer you with an answer that I'm not 100% certain, let me take that away, find out, and come back with an answer to Jeff, and he can circulate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Eileen, this first time you've stumped Mark. So
What?
yes.
I'm winning at life. Okay.
Eileen, I'm writing your name down as the stumper in the group. So collecting payments, automatically reconciling, posting those journal entries. We have within Billhighway complete budgeting software. So if you use budgets as those journal entries are made, the budget is updated automatically. When you log into Billhighway, and again, I'll show you this, there's a dashboard for a very quick view of everything that's happening throughout your network. Now, remember I said, if you want to keep your local bank account, you certainly can. And these funds that come into your network would then get swept out every night, and you can go on and do whatever you want with them at that point. We have no connection to that. But what most networks choose to do is keep their money in their Billhighway bank account. Because what that allows you to do then is to pay all your bills or disbursements, right, expenses through Billhighway. We have 3 ways you can do that. You can do online bill pay. We have what we call prepaid cards. So prepaid cards like a debit card. It's an actual MasterCard network card. It has your network name on it, but you load money onto it. So a debit card, I can go to the bank and pull out all my money. A prepaid card is more like a Starbucks card. So you can put $100 on it or $1,000 on it or whatever. And so if you have a president that's going to, I don't know, WCR's national conference and you're paying their way, put $2,000 on whatever they pay for their hotel or their meals or whatever off of that. Or if you have a volunteer that's going to go to Staples, put $50 or $100 on it. Whatever they spend off of that card, or you spend out of your Billhighway account, all of those journal entries are posted automatically as well, just like the incoming funds. So if you think about it now from that income statement, now I've got the entire right side of an income statement populated, and all of your financial reporting, all the money that's coming in, all the money that's being spent, is updating the budget, is updating all of your financial statements. They're being created automatically in real time as money flows in and flows out. And so at the end of the year, when it comes time to file your 990s, all of that data is within our system, and it's a simple 990 export to come out that you can then take to your tax preparer to say, here, go file my 990, here's all the information. I'll tell you that we're working on an integration to allow you to file that 990 tax return directly out of Billhighway, but we're not there yet. So what we do today is we give you the report with all the figures on it. The third way, I mentioned there are 3 ways to pay bills. One is online bill pay, which is what most people use. Almost every network will choose to have a prepaid card. And then if you want, we can also give you actual paper check stock. A lot of folks are getting away from that, but you can have actual physical checks that print out through a local printer in your office or whatever. But let me talk about some of the automation that we bring to this. So within Billhighway, you will be required to have 2-person approval on every expense that is paid. But we make sure that we do that in a way that makes it easy and automated. So let's say that I'm the treasurer and Jeff is the president, and Jeff is tasked with being the second signer on any payments that go out. So I'm going to go into Billhighway and I'm going to do an online bill pay to ABC Catering for $201 for this event we had last week. I go in and pay that just like you do online bill pay in your own personal banking experience. The difference is when we do it, the payment goes out. In Billhighway, that payment actually pens and an electronic notification goes out to Jeff and says, hey, Mark Privos is trying to pay ABC Catering $201 for this event. Do you approve or not? He clicks approve and then out goes the check. And I've just put a process in place that makes sure that no one accidentally or intentionally can remove money out of your network's account with at least 2 people approving it. And everything that just happened is time dated and stamped for audit purposes. So the same thing if you were doing a paper check, that it would go in and penned within our system. Once it's approved, then the check would print out. We even have something on our checks called positive pay, which if somebody takes one of your Billhighway checks and writes it out with a pen by hand, when it gets to our bank, they won't cash it because it has to be generated from our system. And oh, by the way, our system will not process a payment for more money than you have in your account. So you can never bounce a check. And these prepaid cards are so popular because guess what? Now I don't have to use my own credit card or file an expense report, and somebody has to go through the reimbursement of all of that. So everywhere we turn, we're just eliminating manual tasks around running your chapter's finances, while at the same time putting controls in place that make sure that we're doing it with proper fiscal prudence. No one's writing credit card numbers down on a napkin, right? I mean, we've got a mobile app that does all of that stuff. And then lastly, let me tell you that we have a team in Michigan that is there to support your chapter leaders. So if you have questions about how to use Billhighway, how do I generate this report? How do I do a stop payment on this check? How do I lost my password. You call Billhighway, and then we have folks that will walk you through all of your questions and give you full support around all of that. So I know I've said a lot, so let me just pause there and see if there's questions around any of this topic.
Sure, Jamie's got a question. She's got her hand raised. Go ahead, Jamie.
Sorry, I don't mean to be a pain in the neck. What happens, because I love the 2-person, the verification on payments, that kind of thing. Just curious, what happens if Jeff didn't approve that payment? What is Billhighway's process after that?
Well, that payment is going to stay in our system. It will not be sent until it gets approved. So he may not approve it because he says, you know what, I don't remember this. And I need to talk to the treasurer, and eventually it's going to either need to be approved or not. And you can also report through our system on all pending payments that have not had approval yet. The other thing that I can tell you related to this, even the ability to add a vendor to Billhighway in order to be paid requires 2-person approval. So again, think about our own online bill pay experience. I go in and add Verizon Wireless as a payee, and they're there. They just get added. In Billhighway, if I do that as a treasurer for this ABC Catering company, Jeff's going to get a notification. Hey, Mark Cruz trying to add ABC Catering as a vendor. Do you approve or not? And that keeps me from adding my wife as a vendor and sending payments to them, right? So we've seen situations where a treasurer will get a bill. It could be from a fake phone company or whatever, and they think it's legit, and they go in and they pay it. And then, a month later, they're like, wait, I just sent $500 to the Bank of England. How do I get this money back? It was a scam. That can't happen within Billhighway.
Yeah, you just want to make sure that the treasurer, whoever's going to input the accounts, or however, the accounts are getting in there, is that person doesn't load up their, house payment or the security on their own personal computer. I mean, it gives the second signer an option to really pay attention to where that money's being sent to.
I think I understand your question. Regardless of what roles or privileges or rights or access one person has, any expense coming out of this bank account requires 2-person approval. It will not get initiated unless that second person has approved it. And in days like we have today, where people aren't always in face-to-face meetings and people can't sign checks, et cetera, the whole process becomes electronic. So the person doesn't have to be present to put a wet signature on a check. Was that your question?
Mark, Christine Citrano, who is the president of Women's Council Florida, has a question for you. Go ahead, Christine.
Thank you so much. I actually have 3 questions. First of all, thank you very much, Mark. This is fascinating information. You mentioned that you have some support. Is it 24/7 or is the support restricted?
It's not 24/7. I want to say that it is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern time. I believe that's correct. It may be 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And it is 7 days a week, but it's not 24/7.
So in lieu of not being 24/7, is there an online chat person available?
There's not online chat available.
Okay.
24/7. It's just during those normal support hours.
Okay.
Now, I think we have something like 15,000 chapters that run on Billhighway. I haven't ever found an issue with support being available during business hours. But I think as a company, if we found that to be a problem, then we would address that.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, it is all electronic, and as you mentioned, there are a proliferation of scam artists out there. What is the security that Billhighway has?
Sure, it's a great question. And know too that over the past 2 years, WCR headquarters has vetted all of this. But to answer your question with some specificity, our platform runs on something called AWS. If you're a technical person, you'll recognize AWS as Amazon Web Services. So if you're comfortable doing online shopping on Amazon, the same platform that runs Amazon runs Billhighway. From a banking perspective, the bank that we use, or the back end behind Billhighway, is a bank called Fifth Third Bank. Fifth Third, like 5 and 3. If you're not familiar with them, Fifth Third would be kind of what I would call a super regional bank. So not a Citi or Chase, but more like a PNC bank along those lines. And all of the banking, online banking, encryption and security that you would have with any banking environment is the same that is delivered through Billhighway. And then everything that happens with our system is tokenized and encrypted. We process over $1 billion in payments a year. We go through all sorts of security audits on an annual basis that we have to pass. And Billhighway is actually PCI level 1 compliant, which is the highest level of PCI compliance that an online financial system can have. And in fact, in some of our markets, we have had associations that their insurance premiums have been lowered because they're using Billhighway throughout their network ecosystem. So we eliminate automatically. So I have this slide up on Billhighway Anywhere. That's the kind of the tag name, brand name for our in-person payment solution. We've seen associations where people are literally, talking to members and asking them for their credit card number. And their expiration date and their 3-digit security code or whatever. Here, all that type of stuff goes away. So tell me if that was responsive to your question or not.
Yes, it was. Thank you. And one last question I have is, you mentioned, and I love the idea of having the 2 signers, no payment is made. What happens in a situation where you have 2 people signed up to be the authorized signatures on a payment, and one of them leaves, and there's a lag between replacing the one who left with a new person? What explain to me that scenario?
Yeah, so if I understand your question, you're asking if you had an open officer role that was unfilled, we would assign those rights and privileges to someone else that you designate.
Okay, thank you.
So if Jeff were the president and he resigned for whatever reason, you would appoint someone else to be that second signer, for example, as we talked about. So one of the cool things about Billhighway is you can authorize access by a lot of different people, right? So maybe you have a CPA or bookkeeper, that files taxes and you want to give them access. You can do that. I'm not suggesting that you would, but those are all the types of things that you can do because you're not banking in a paper environment anymore where people have to have receipts or everything can be viewed online. In fact, speaking of online, if you all will give me an opportunity to flip screens here.
Sure. And we've got a question from Stacy Krolak as well from Arizona, who is our national liaison elect. Stacy?
Hi, Stacy.
Let me just unmute myself. Okay. Mark and Jeff, Christmas come early. I'm so excited. I can't even believe this. This is fascinating. I have a similar question to Christine down in Florida. Is there capability to add a third person? I'm always thinking, okay, somebody got hospitalized that was the second authorization person. Can we add a third person so in lieu of something like that, we don't run into that hiccup?
We don't. It's a great question, Stacy. We don't have that today where we can add a third person. It would require one of those people's roles to be substituted with someone else. So I think what you're saying is I, the treasurer, initiate a payment, and then two people or one of two people have to approve. And we don't have that set up to operate that way today.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any other follow-up questions or no?
Well,
all right, so I'm watching the clock a little bit.
no, that was it. That was just
Good. I apologize for the lag on Zoom. I realize sometimes that can be a little bit awkward. I think we're all kind of getting used to that though. Can you all, did my screen change for everyone? Are you now looking at the Billhighway? Okay, good. So I logged in to a demo version of Billhighway as if I were a network leader. And so the first thing that you might look at and say, well, there's some things here that I don't even understand. We don't even talk that way. So this is just a demo account. We use it in all of our different potential clients. So know that in the real world, this is branded to you. The terminology that you use will be here. So just kind of look past, if you can help me do that, some of the things that might not exactly sync with how you call things. But in general, know that when you log in, and with the proper rights and privileges, you're going to see a few things. So you're going to see your budget if you're using that. And remember that as money comes in and flows out, journal entries are automatically posted, and so the budget is always kept up to date. You will see your bank accounts. And I say accounts in that I mean that, so I bank with Chase personally. I log into chase.com. I've got a checking account and I've got a couple of savings accounts, and they all show there. This is the same type of thing. So you may, for your network, just have one local operating account. That's all you have. But we have some clients where their networks may have a scholarship fund or a foundation. And if they do, that will appear here because usually you don't want to commingle those funds, right? So Billhighway can process a payment and settle the funds into the right account. And then, as I mentioned earlier, do all the appropriate journal entries. We have some associations where money is collected at the local level and flows up to national instead of like where you have, where money is collected at the national flows down. In your case, I don't see a use for this, and that just wouldn't appear there. We have some networks, you might process an American Express payment. And American Express notoriously takes a long time for the money to actually hit your account. And they like, from an accounting perspective, to see that, oh, you know what, a $300 American Express charge was authorized and approved. We have that money coming, but it's in transit. And so 300 would show here, and then when it's actually hit your account, it would automatically be moved into your operating account, and this in-transit account would go to zero. Now, remember what I said earlier, if you choose to do your own local banking and keep doing that, this local operating account is always going to be set to zero because money's going to, well, I shouldn't say always going to be set to zero, but every night it's going to be zeroed out because money's going to come in and then it's going to get swept. Next day, money comes in, then it gets swept. But most of you, as I mentioned, will choose to do all of your expenses through Billhighway as well. If you do that, this money grows because I can't spend money where there isn't any. And this cash out tab appears. And here are all the ways that you can spend money out of your account like we talked about. So online bill pay, actual physical checks, prepaid cards. You can order as many cards as you want. If you want your president to have one, your treasurer to have one, if you want another one sitting around, you know, to loan out, whatever. So remember when I mentioned, I said that I bank with Chase, and I can say, take $100 out of my savings account and move it into my checking account. That happens automatically. These prepaid cards work the same way. They're kind of like virtual accounts that have a physical card that interacts access with them. So you can load money onto a prepaid card and it happens instantly. You can pull money off, you can cancel cards, unload cards, zero them out. And when I say instantly, by the way, these are subject to that same two-person approval. So I can, as a treasurer or whomever you designate, put $100 on this card, somebody has to approve it, and then the card gets loaded. If you remember when we started, I mentioned that we built this originally. Our first market was sororities. So this was built for like 19-year-old college women that oftentimes don't know how to balance a checkbook, let alone run a chapter, right? So we didn't even call them accounts receivables and payables. It's just cash in, cash out. If you can log in and do online banking, you can use Billhighway. Because of our automated accounting instructions for all these journal entries, any report that you would want to pull or need to pull is probably already existing in our system and will always be up to date. And so if you want to run a general ledger detail report, or you want to, I don't know, see how many checks we received or whatever that might be, all that's within our system. By the way, we do training on all this. It's all included as our solution. So in addition to the support center, we'll do training for treasurers, presidents, whatever. We post that online. It's specific to WCR, right? So we do customized training just for you. Those modules become available that people can log on, and we'll come out if you want to your annual conference or whatever. We can do new treasurer training, things like that. And I'm going to stop and take questions in just a minute, but I want to show you one other thing here real quick. If you want to see your member list, you can come into this My Organization tab. You can search by member name. You can run a whole list, right? And remember, so this is because of our integration with Fontiva. If you want to sort based upon member status or member type, again, remember, some of these categories are not yours. Whatever your member types and statuses are will be in the Billhighway system, right? I know that you don't have account numbers. You probably have member numbers, and you don't have billing types. You probably have member types. But typically when you run a report like that, we will, this is like kind of like a mailing list. Anytime you run a report on the Billhighway, there's always a link there to export to Excel. But anytime you want to see more detail, there's always a way to drill down. And so if I want to look at this Jack Albertson person in particular, what we will do when we set this up is whatever data fields exist in that member record in Fontiva that we want to expose to the networks or the states, all of those can be seen here. So I ran through that really quickly because we had a lot of great questions, and I want to be sensitive to everyone's time. So I just want to give you a quick overview of what all this looks like. Let me pause there though and see what questions we might have. Wow, I'm surprised. I guess we got them all out ahead of time.
Actually, we have one question from Tammy Knoll from Georgia. Go ahead, Tammy. Tammy just needs you to unmute yourself.
Apologize.
There you are.
Great, Mark. Great presentation. This is fabulous. Right on time, obviously. But you answered my question. Georgia does have a scholarship program and a foundation. And you answered my question right on time, how it will fit in integrated with this system. So thank you so much. This is really good.
Fantastic. I appreciate that feedback. I do want to, if I don't cover costs, then I'm gonna do a big
Mark,
disservice.
before we get to that, a good question from Lisa Waldeck. I know the answer, but I'm gonna let you answer it. Can you pull member activity? What events they have attended, etc.?
We can pull any activity in Fontiva that you want to share.
Yep.
So when we set Billhighway up, the first thing that we will do is we will work with the national staff to define and implement the integration into Fontiva. And there will be a lot of decision points that they will make as to what data do we want to flow from Fontiva and show within Billhighway. And so, but if it exists in Fontiva, then we can make it available within Billhighway.
Okay. And Eileen, go ahead. You have a question.
Hi, Mark. I just want to be clear that you don't have a debit card system. You have a prepaid card system, correct?
Correct.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
You are exactly correct. And the reason why we do that is because we feel it's a better fiscal control. So, but it is a MasterCard. It works anywhere that MasterCard is accepted. It can be set up with a PIN if you want to allow cash to be drawn from an ATM, or that can be blocked if you don't, right? So you as a network get to decide what features are available on that prepaid card. In our college market, for example, they can't buy alcohol with it. So you can't go into a state liquor store and use your prepaid card. We can do things like that. But that's all up to the network to decide. So I just want to talk about fees, and then I'm happy to stay as long as anyone wants. And I would just say, if anyone needs to drop off, please feel free to do that. I personally won't be offended. I don't suspect Jeff will. But here's how we pay for Billhighway. So we're not a credit card processor. That's not our core business. But for obvious reasons, we have credit card processing built into our system. I should say credit card or check as well. So when you process a credit card through Billhighway, we charge 2.7% for that. It doesn't matter if it's an American Express or a Delta Sky Miles or a plain old Visa. A lot of the payment processors charge different rates depending upon the type of card that you use. Sometimes American Express costs more, rewards cards cost more. Sometimes they will charge you an additional 7 cents per transaction or things like that, which is a lot of money if you're doing a $10 transaction. This 2.7% is our pass-through cost to pay Visa and all the banking networks that business transforms over. To that fee, we add 1.3%. That's how we pay for the Billhighway solution services and everything that I've talked to you about. So if you're processing, let's say a credit card, for example, you're going to pay a total of 4%. So if it was a $100 charge, we would settle $96 into your Billhighway account. $2.70 we would send out to all the payment processing people, and then $1.30 would be kept for Billhighway to pay for that solution. If you're accepting checks, which we encourage associations to let members pay by online check, where I put in my 16-digit, instead of my 16-digit Visa number, I'm putting in my bank account and routing number. The cost to process a check is a third of what it is to process a credit card payment. And then that same 1.3% applies. So most association networks or chapters that I see are paying pretty close to 4% on PayPal or Stripe. You may or may not be, but what I sometimes hear is a network leader will say, 4%, we're not paying anywhere near 4% for credit card transactions. And I say, well, you're not here either. You're paying 2.7%. The 1.3% is for all the other stuff that I just showed you. But I do want to make that clear, because for some reason this slide was at the end of the presentation and I ran out of time and I didn't want to skip such an important thing. So questions about any of that?
Excuse me, what is the charge of you paying our bills?
Nothing. The only way that Billhighway makes money or charges fees is for funds that come into the system. So for you to do online bill pay, print out checks, make prepaid card transactions, there's no costs to any of that. So we've seen associations where they might use, there's a company out there, it has a name similar to us, but they're in a completely different business, but they're called bill.com or billpay.com or something like that. And they're just an online bill payment system that integrates into QuickBooks. And I think they charge like $1 a payment or something like that. The entire expense side of Billhighway is no cost to you. And let me asterisk just one thing, and the asterisk will make sense in a minute. There is, if you want checks, there was whatever your bank would charge you to print 50 checks, $12 or whatever that is. That would, you'd pay for that. I think to order a prepaid card, it's a $6 fee to have the card created and mailed and all of that stuff. But the actual using of that part of the system, there's no cost whatsoever. So we see networks that say, you know what, I don't need to use QuickBooks anymore, because Billhighway, not only does it do everything that QuickBooks does, it does everything that QuickBooks does without me having to enter entries off of our bank statements in the QuickBooks. So there's a cost that goes away. We've seen folks that have costs just to do banking, right? That goes away. And for those networks where maybe there's a little bit of an incremental cost to what you have now, hopefully the value of a solution that we're providing, someone determines is worth the additional cost. But then again, as we said earlier, if not, this is something that we're offering to networks. It's not something that's being required by networks.
Any other questions? Mark, I think that we've got Christine Citrano from Women's Council Florida. Go ahead, Christine.
And this is a question for Mark, and it's also a question for Jeff. With regard to the various networks having an opt-out position, do you, Mark, for the other organizations that you handle, do you find there to be any complications with that some are in and some are out? And Jeff, would you anticipate that being?
Yeah, it's funny. You all ask the same questions I've been asking, and Mark's going to say this. Watch, he's going to say initially, people are going to want to opt out as it gets stickiness. Everyone's going to want to do it. Unless someone's got, they love their community bank or something like that, but the adaptation rate becomes so quick because people don't volunteer in associations to do all this stuff. In fact, it's why they don't want to do it. And so this eliminates all this stuff. But go ahead, Mark. I know you and I've had the question Christine has asked. We've gone back and forth with a lot, so it's interesting. It mirrors.
Jeff, I'll send you a portion of my paycheck for doing my job for me. Thank you for that great answer. So the additional color that I would add to that is we're going to set up Billhighway so that every I believe, and Jeff and the team are ultimately responsible for this decision. But typically how we would do this, I should say, is that every network will have an account in Billhighway to receive their national dues through. I think that the team in Chicago is looking for ways to automate and create efficiency and do more with less. And so the concept that Billhighway can automatically split a dues payment and eliminate what actually is a pretty large amount of responsibility and manual work to distribute all those payments to the states and networks will go away. Then the network then will decide, do you just want that to be swept out when it hits your Billhighway account, and you probably never even will pay attention to your Billhighway account, but it's almost just like a settlement account that's sending those funds on their way. Typically within the first year, though, 90% of your networks will opt to use Billhighway's full solution because it literally makes no sense for them not to. And so what we normally do in a situation like this, and I'm sure we'll do it the same way with WCR, is we will put together a chapter advisory group. Maybe some of you will volunteer to be on that. And you will be or I should say the network advisory group, which is a really bad acronym. So we're going to call everybody the NAG group. But what that will do is make sure that the network's needs and perspective and sensitivities are all included as we implement Billhighway. You all then will be the first pilot groups or users of the system. And then we typically will use you to communicate, hey, this is how we used to do things before Billhighway. This is how we do things now. This is how my life is so much better. We've saved this much time. We've saved this much cost, whatever that is. And that message will go viral to the rest of the networks. And that's typically how we have adoption. But we have a team that we actually call them our adoption team at Billhighway that will work with you all to educate your networks on what Billhighway can do for them and how it works and get them set up. So I don't even remember the original question, but hopefully I addressed it.
Eileen's got one more question.
I do. It's just an observation, really, Jeff, is that near the end of the year, when we have people that are renewing their membership and becoming new members, we'll just need a little help reconciling that for like 2020 budget versus 2021 budget. So I just see that as an issue in the future that we'll just need a little assistance with.
Okay. Yeah, and I think there's a question in the chat box saying how soon can we start, and that's what we've that's what we've got to get into as far as the timing of all this and when it goes online and those moving parts. So yeah, we got to look into that.
And although we're showing this to you now on June the 18th, the system will not be live until next year.
Next year?
Next year.
I have a question on the network list, because, the old system had an easier way to, view your members. So the parameters on that, I guess, will be set up by national as to, what the categories are.
So
Yeah.
Roseanne, I would say that the way that you view your members today does not need to go away. So if you have I'm assuming that you have some kind of network portal that you all log into, you can continue to do that.
Well, it's an Excel spreadsheet, but before it was much easier to, pull up your members, and get the information. So this seems more like the old system.
I see what you're saying. Okay, so Jeff, this is before you guys moved to Vontiva.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll answer it. I'll answer it that way. Is the Billhighway project would be something separate than that. Do the two systems, as we build on each other, does it merge a little bit more? And is there a new, do some of the functionalities that we built from the old to the new system suddenly become not so useful? Could be, but the issue behind the rosters and the not yet renewed reports and all of that stems from trying to build a like-for-like system. You know, the old trying to layer things onto the new system. It's going to be refined in time, and you know, that's as that gets better too, then it makes the Billhighway thing easier. But I see them as two separate things. But eventually, yeah, there will be a bit of merging on it.
So, you know, obviously not an official poll or anything, but I think I'm getting the sense from most of the folks on the call that this would be something that you would welcome and find useful.
Definitely.
Great, good. So Jeff has recorded this session. I'm sure he can make it available to those who might want to, you know, reference back or whatever. And but thank you for letting me do this for you all today. I came to work at Billhighway after working 20 years in different fields, specifically because Billhighway only works with nonprofits. And once I turned 50, I started thinking about what's my legacy? You know, how am I making an impact in the world? And Billhighway allows me to combine the work that I do for my career with an organization that's out serving, you know, nonprofits that have really great missions. And so I love doing things like this, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with everybody this afternoon or this morning, depending upon where you're at.
Great.
So thank you.
Thanks everybody for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone.